I thought my life was perfect until the truth came out. So, my boyfriend told me he got this amazing contract opportunity overseas. 40 days, he said. Good money, he said. He'd miss me terribly, he said. I believed every word because why wouldn't I? We'd been together for 3 years, living together for one, and I thought we were solid. Rock solid. The night before he left, he was acting strange. Not suspicious strange, just clingy. Kept hugging me, telling me how much he loved me, how he'd call every single day. I remember thinking it was sweet. God, I was so naive. First week went fine. He called every evening like clockwork. Told me about his days, the work site, his colleagues, the terrible hotel food. I'd tell him about my job, my annoying boss, what I made for dinner. Normal couple stuff. But then I noticed something. The calls started getting shorter. He'd sound distracted. Sometimes I'd hear people talking in the background and he'd get weirdly quiet or move to another room. By week 2, the calls became every other day. Just so busy, babe, he'd say. This project is killing me. I tried to be understanding. I really did. But something felt off in my gut. You know that feeling? When your instincts are screaming but your heart is trying to shut them up? Then my friend Sarah called me. She works in recruitment for international contracts, and she casually mentioned over coffee that her company was looking for people in my field for a short-term project. And guess where? The exact same city where my boyfriend was supposedly working. Same industry too. Different company, but same area. I laughed it off at first. What were the chances? But that night, lying in bed alone, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The shortened calls, the background noises, the way he'd been acting before he left. Something wasn't adding up, and I needed to know. I applied for the contract the next morning. Didn't tell him. Didn't tell anyone except Sarah. The interview process was fast. They needed people urgently. Within a week, I had the job. 4 weeks, overlapping with the last part of his contract. My hands were shaking when I accepted the offer. I still didn't tell him. I know. If you trust someone, you should communicate. But I needed to know the truth. And I had this sick feeling that if I told him I was coming, whatever truth there was would disappear. He'd have time to cover his tracks. So I kept quiet, made up some excuse about being busy with a new project at work when he asked why I seemed distracted. The flight over was torture. 13 hours of second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. Maybe I was about to make a fool of myself and damage our relationship over nothing. But I couldn't turn back. I had to see this through. I arrived on a Wednesday evening. My company put me up in a decent hotel in the city center, ironically much nicer than where he'd described staying. I texted him that I was going to bed early because of work stuff. He replied with a heart emoji. My stomach twisted. Thursday, I started work. Spent the whole day distracted, checking my phone, planning what to do. Should I surprise him at his hotel? Should I call first? What if I was wrong about everything? But what if I was right? Friday evening, I decided to just go to the address he'd given me for his hotel. It was about 20 minutes from where I was staying. I took an Uber, my heart pounding the entire way. The hotel was nice. Nicer than he'd made it sound. Not 5-star luxury, but definitely not the barely functional place he'd complained about. I walked into the lobby, trying to look casual. My plan was simple. Ask at the front desk if they could ring his room. But as I approached the desk, I saw him, just walking out of the elevator. And he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. Blonde, pretty, laughing at something he'd just said. His hand was on her lower back, that casual, intimate gesture that belongs to people who are together. I froze completely, just stood there in the middle of the lobby like a statue while my entire world crumbled around me. They didn't see me. They were too wrapped up in each other, heading toward the hotel restaurant. I watched them walk in, watched them get seated at a corner table, watched him pull out her chair for her. The same way he used to do for me on our early dates. I should have confronted them right there. Should have walked up to that table and demanded answers. But I couldn't move. I literally couldn't make my legs work. So I did the only thing I could do. I left the hotel, walked around the block about 5 times trying to breathe, and then came back. This time, I went straight to the front desk. The receptionist was kind, mid-50s, with sympathetic eyes. I must have looked like a mess because she asked if I was okay before I even said anything. "I need to know if someone is staying here," I said, my voice barely working. I gave her his name. She typed on her computer, then looked up at me with an expression that told me everything. "Yes, we have a guest by that name. Would you like me to call the room?" "What room number?" I asked. She hesitated. "I'm not supposed to—" "Please," I cut her off. "I'm his girlfriend. I flew here from home. Please." Something in my voice must have convinced her because she glanced around, then quietly said, "Room 447. But miss, I should tell you, the room is registered to 2 guests, has been since check-in 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. They'd been here together for 3 weeks. Maybe longer if they'd switched hotels. My entire body went cold. "Thank you," I managed to say, and walked toward the elevator before I could fall apart completely. I rode up to the 4th floor, found room 447, stood outside the door for what felt like hours but was probably just minutes. I could hear the TV inside, laughter, normal, comfortable sounds of people relaxing together. I knocked. The sounds inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened. He stood there in the hotel robe, hair wet from a shower, completely relaxed. For one single second, his face showed pure happiness at seeing me. Then reality crashed down and his expression changed to absolute horror. "Babe," he started, but I pushed past him into the room. The blonde woman was sitting on the bed in pajamas, her hair also wet. There were 2 wine glasses on the nightstand, candles, the whole romantic setup. She looked between us, confused at first, then understanding dawned on her face. "Who's this?" she asked. "Pulling the blanket up like that would somehow make this less awful." "I'm his girlfriend of 3 years," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Who are you?" "I'm his fiancé of 6 months," she said, and my world exploded for the second time that night. I literally laughed. Not because it was funny, but because what else do you do when your brain completely short-circuits? "Fiancé?" He was trying to talk, making these pathetic stammering sounds. But neither of us was listening to him anymore. We were staring at each other, 2 women who'd just discovered they'd been played by the same man. "He proposed in March," she said, still clutching that blanket. "Told me he loved me, that he'd never felt this way before, that he wanted to build a life together. He said this contract was going to help us save for a house." "We've been living together for a year," I told her. "In the apartment he told you was his friend's place, where he was crashing between leases, I'm guessing?" Her face confirmed it. "Look," he finally managed to say, "this isn't— I can explain." "Explain what?" I turned on him, and all that shock converted to pure rage. "Explain how you've been living a double life. Explain how you propose to someone while sleeping in my bed every night. Explain which one of us you actually love. Or was that a lie too?" "Both of you," he had the audacity to say. "I love both of you. I didn't mean for this to happen, it just—" "Oh, fuck off," the blonde, whose name I still didn't know, cut him off. She was out of the bed now, grabbing clothes from a suitcase. "You don't get to make this some romantic tragedy where you're torn between 2 loves. You're just a cheating asshole." "You're engaged to her," I said, that fact finally sinking in. "You asked her to marry you while I was at home, planning what to cook you for dinner when you got back." He reached for me and I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped. Don't you dare touch me." "I'm staying in this city for 3 more weeks," I said, my voice ice cold. "I have a contract, and I'm not breaking it because of you. But I'm going back to the apartment when I'm done, and I'm packing up everything that's mine. If any of your shit is still there when I leave, I'm donating it." "Me too," the fiancé said, now fully dressed. "I'm done. We're done. I'm going to my room." "Your room?" I asked. "I got my own room 3 days ago," she said. "We had a fight about wedding plans. He said he needed space to think. Guess now I know what he was really thinking about." She grabbed her purse and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at me. "I'm Emily, by the way. And I'm sorry. I had no idea about you." "I'm sorry too," I said. "And I had no idea about you either." We looked at each other for a moment, 2 strangers connected by the worst possible circumstance, and something passed between us. Some mutual understanding that we weren't enemies. We were both victims of the same manipulative bastard. Emily left, the door closing behind her with a final click. I stood there looking at him. This man I'd loved, this man I'd trusted, this man I'd built a life with, and felt absolutely nothing. The love had drained out of me in the span of 30 minutes, leaving behind just this hollow, tired feeling. "I really did love you," he said quietly. "I still do." "No," I said. "You loved what I gave you. Stability, a home, someone to come back to. But you don't love people you betray like this. You don't propose to someone else while someone is waiting for you at home. That's not love. I don't even know what that is, but it's not love." I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "I hope the 40 days were worth it, because you just lost two people who actually cared about you." I left him standing there in that hotel room and took the elevator back down. Emily was in the lobby, and when she saw me, she stood up from where she'd been sitting. "Want to get a drink?" she asked. "I think we both need one." We ended up at a bar down the street, two heartbroken women who should have been rivals, but instead found themselves united by their mutual devastation. We talked for hours, compared stories, timelines, lies he'd told. It was horrifying how meticulously he'd planned everything. Different social media accounts, carefully scheduled phone calls, an entire fabricated life. "He told me his family died in a car accident," Emily said at one point. "Said he had no one, that I was going to be his new family." "His parents lived 20 minutes from our apartment," I said. "I had dinner with them 2 weeks before he left." We sat in silence for a moment, processing that level of deception. "I took this contract to catch him," I admitted. "I had this feeling something was wrong, and my friend told me about jobs here, and I just knew I had to see for myself." "Good instincts," Emily said. "I wish I'd had the same. I just trusted him completely." "So did I said, until I didn't." We exchanged numbers before heading back to our respective hotels, made plans to meet up again before I left the city. It was strange, bonding with someone over shared heartbreak, but there was something comforting about not being alone in this. The next 3 weeks were surreal. I focused on work during the day, which was actually interesting and helped distract me. Emily and I met up several times, coffee, dinners, even went to a museum one weekend. We became friends in this weird, unexpected way. Trauma bonding, probably, but it felt real. He tried to contact both of us. Calls, texts, emails, long messages about how sorry he was, how he'd made mistakes, how he wanted to make things right. We compared his messages. He was sending almost identical apologies to both of us, just changing the names. Emily suggested we both block him, and we did. On my last day in the city, Emily and I met for lunch. She was leaving too, heading back home to her city, which was actually only a few hours from mine. "You know what's crazy?" she said over pasta. "I'm almost grateful this happened now instead of after the wedding. Can you imagine? Finding out after we were married?" "Or imagine if I never found out," I said. "If I'd just waited at home, suspicious but unable to prove anything, while he kept this going for months or years." We clinked our wine glasses together. "To our instincts," Emily said, "and to being free of lying bastards. To finding someone who actually deserves us next time," I added. I flew home that evening, my contract completed, and my relationship ended. The apartment felt different when I walked in. Smaller somehow, less like home. He'd left messages on the machine. I deleted them without listening. I spent that weekend packing his stuff. Emily drove down to help, bringing wine and takeout. We made a party of it, music playing while we boxed up his clothes, his books, his stupid collection of vintage beer cans he thought would be worth something someday. "Should we smash them?" Emily suggested, holding up a particularly ugly can. "Tempting," I said. "But no, I'm not giving him the satisfaction of knowing he got to us that much." We donated everything to charity. Kept a few things that were legitimately mine that I'd bought. Changed the locks. I'd already removed him from the lease. Emily ended up becoming one of my closest friends. We talked or texted almost every day. She met someone new about 6 months later, a guy who treated her like gold, who was honest and open and introduced her to his family on the second date. She made sure to do thorough background checks this time, which we joked about, but she absolutely did. I took longer to trust again. Dated casually, but nothing serious. Focused on my career, got a promotion, moved to a better apartment. Slowly rebuilt my life into something that was mine alone, not shared with someone who'd been lying the entire time. About a year after everything happened, I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked terrible, thinner, tired, older somehow. He saw me and froze, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. I could have walked away, could have ignored him completely, but I walked over to his table instead. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he replied, looking nervous. "How are you?" "I'm good," I said, and realized I meant it. "I'm really good, actually. Got promoted at work, new apartment, life's pretty great." He nodded, looking down at his coffee. "I'm glad. You deserve that." "I know," I said. "I do deserve that. I deserved honesty too, but we can't change the past." "I'm sorry," he said for probably the 100th time since everything fell apart. "I really am. I was stupid and selfish, and I ruined everything." "Yeah, you did," I agreed. "But you also did me a favor. I would have wasted more years with someone who didn't truly value me. So in a weird way, thank you for being so spectacularly bad at keeping your lies straight." He looked up at me then, and I saw it in his eyes. The realization that I was truly over it, over him, that whatever power he'd once had over me was completely gone. "Emily's engaged," I added, "to someone who actually deserves her. They seem really happy." Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Loss. Good. "I should go," I said. "Take care of yourself." I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. The closure I'd been seeking wasn't some dramatic confrontation or satisfying revenge. It was simply realizing that I'd moved on, healed, and built something better without him. Emily called me that night, and I told her about running into him. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Honestly, nothing," I said. I felt absolutely nothing looking at him. It was like looking at a stranger. "That's the best possible outcome," she said. And it was. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It hurts like hell when it's fresh, feels impossible to survive. But time passes, wounds heal, and one day you wake up and realize that person who destroyed you no longer has any power over your happiness. You took it back. You rebuilt. You survived. I sometimes think about those 40 days, about the contract I took on a hunch, about walking into that hotel lobby and seeing my entire relationship revealed as a lie. It was one of the worst nights of my life. But it was also the beginning of my actual life. The one where I knew my worth, where I had genuine friends, where I refused to settle for anything less than honest love. And honestly, that's worth more than any relationship built on lies ever could be. And honestly, that's worth more than any relationship built on lies ever could be. But the story doesn't end there, because life has this funny way of circling back around when you least expect it. About 18 months after everything went down, I got a message on LinkedIn of all places, from a woman named Jessica. The message was short: "I think we need to talk about Marcus." That was his name, Marcus. I hadn't even typed it out in so long. My first instinct was to delete it. I'd moved on. I was happy. Why would I want to dredge up ancient history? But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on her profile. She worked in marketing, lived in another city about 3 hours away from where Marcus and I had lived together. Pretty dark hair, warm smile in her profile picture. And my stomach sank because I knew exactly why she was messaging me. I called Emily immediately. He did it again. "No way," she breathed. "Another one?" "Another one," I confirmed, staring at Jessica's message. "She found me somehow, wants to talk." "Are you going to respond?" I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to just block her and move on. It wasn't my problem anymore. I'd dealt with my pain, processed my trauma, and built a new life. But then I remembered how Emily and I had found each other, how much it had helped to know I wasn't alone, to compare notes and realize the full extent of his deception together. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm going to respond." I messaged Jessica back, and we arranged a video call for that evening. When her face popped up on my screen, I could see it immediately. That same shell-shocked look I'd probably worn a year and a half ago. That expression of someone whose entire reality had just been shattered. "Thank you for talking to me," she said, her voice shaky. "I know this must be weird." "It's not weird," I assured her. "Trust me, I've been where you are. How did you find me?" She laughed bitterly. "I hired a private investigator. Can you believe that? I felt crazy doing it, but something was off. He'd disappear for days, always had excuses, was weirdly secretive about his phone. The investigator found out about you and Emily, gave me a whole report with timelines and everything." "Smart move," I said. "Wish I'd thought of that instead of flying across the world on a hunch." "You flew across the world?" Her eyes widened, and I ended up telling her the whole story. Then Emily joined the call. We'd made a group chat, the three of us, which would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. 3 women, 3 different cities, all betrayed by the same man. Jessica's story was horrifyingly familiar. He'd met her about 4 months after Emily and I had confronted him in that hotel, told her he was recovering from a bad breakup, that his ex had cheated on him and broken his heart, that he was ready for something real, something honest. The irony was almost funny. "He moved in with me," Jessica said, and Emily and I exchanged looks. 3 months ago, said his lease was up and he wanted us to build a life together. He works from home most days, but he has client meetings a few times a week where he's gone overnight." "Let me guess," I said. "He's staying with another woman during those overnight trips." Jessica nodded miserably. "The I followed him. There's a 4th woman. Her name is Danielle. They've been seeing each other for 2 months. She thinks he's single, traveling for work from another city." "Jesus Christ," Emily muttered. "He's running like 4 different lives at once. How does he keep it all straight?" "Very carefully," I said. "And he probably doesn't. I bet if we compared notes, we'd find overlapping lies and contradictions all over the place." We spent the next 2 hours doing exactly that, creating a shared document, building a timeline of Marcus's lies. It was like putting together the world's most depressing puzzle. He'd told Jessica his parents were dead. He told Danielle they were alive but estranged. He'd told different stories about his education, his past relationships, his job history. Some lies were small and pointless. Others were massive and calculated. "Why does he do this?" Jessica asked at one point, tears streaming down her face. "Like, what does he get out of having multiple relationships at once? Is it just about sex?" "I don't think so," Emily said thoughtfully. "I mean, that's part of it, obviously. But I think it's more about power, about knowing he can fool people, about having backup options so he's never alone. He's fundamentally broken in some way." "He's a narcissist," I added. "I did a lot of reading after everything happened. Classic narcissistic behavior. The lying, the compartmentalization, the lack of genuine empathy. He probably tells himself he loves all of us. He might even believe it. But he's not capable of real love because real love requires honesty and vulnerability and putting someone else's needs equal to your own." Jessica wiped her eyes. "So what do I do? Just leave? Kick him out?" "That's up to you," I said. "But if you're asking my advice, yes, leave. Because it will never get better. He will never change. And every day you stay is a day you could be healing and moving forward." "What about Danielle?" Emily asked. "Should we tell her?" We debated this for a while. On one hand, she deserved to know. On the other hand, was it our responsibility to keep tracking down Marcus's victims and breaking the news? Where did our obligation end? Jessica made the decision. "I want to tell her. I want her to know before she gets in any deeper. If someone had told me 6 months ago, I could have saved myself so much pain." So we found Danielle, Jessica's I had her contact information, and Jessica reached out. Danielle was skeptical at first, thought it might be a scam or some weird jealousy thing. But when Jessica sent her photos of Marcus's things in her apartment, screenshots of their text conversations with matching timestamps to when he'd told Danielle he was in his home city, Danielle agreed to meet. We all met up, the 4 of us, at a coffee shop halfway between Jessica and Danielle's cities. It was surreal, sitting around a table with 3 other women who'd all been romantically involved with the same man at overlapping times. We looked like some kind of support group, which I guess we were. Danielle was the youngest, mid-20s, and she was angry in a way the rest of us had moved past. I want to destroy him, she said. I want everyone to know what he is. I want to blast him on social media, call his job, ruin his life the way he ruined mine. I felt that way too, I told her. But revenge doesn't actually make you feel better. It just keeps you tied to him, keeps you thinking about him, gives him continued power over your emotional state. So we just let him get away with it? Danielle demanded. Let him move on to the next victim? No, Emily said quietly. She'd been mostly silent, processing everything. We warn people. We tell the truth when it's relevant. But we don't make him the center of our lives anymore. That's what he wants. Attention, drama, women fighting over him. We don't give him that satisfaction. But Danielle had a point. How many other women were out there? How many had we not found? Marcus was clearly a serial relationship fraudster, moving from victim to victim, maintaining multiple relationships simultaneously. It was pathological. Jessica's PI had done more digging. Turns out Marcus had done this before, years ago, before any of us. There were at least 2 other women he'd juggled simultaneously in his 20s. One had filed a police report when he'd stolen money from her, but the charges were dropped when he paid her back. He had a pattern, and it went back further than any of us had realized. There's a website, Danielle said suddenly, for reporting scammers and con artists. Maybe we should put his information there, not for revenge, but to warn people. If I'd Googled him and found warnings from other women, I might have thought twice. We discussed it, debated the ethics, the potential legal ramifications, the question of whether it was our place. Finally, we decided that Jessica would post a factual account on one of those warning websites. No emotional language, just dates, facts, and a notice that this person had been in confirmed multiple simultaneous relationships with women who were unaware of each other. I'm changing my number, Danielle announced, blocking him on everything. He's been texting me wondering where I am. Told him I was visiting family. I'm going to send him one message telling him I know everything, and then he's dead to me. I'm going to do the same, Jessica said. One message, then blocked everywhere. Emily and I already had him blocked, but we supported their decisions. We all exchanged numbers, created a group chat, 4 strangers brought together by one man's systematic deception. Over the next few weeks, Jessica and Danielle went through the same healing process Emily and I had been through. The anger, the grief, the self-doubt, the eventual acceptance. Emily and I were there for them through all of it, offering perspective from further down the healing road. I can't believe I didn't see it, Jessica said during one of our video calls. Looking back, there were so many signs. So many times things didn't add up. That's what gaslighting does, I explained. He makes you doubt your own perception. Every time you question something, he has an explanation. Eventually, you stop trusting your gut because he's convinced you your gut is wrong. Marcus tried to contact all of us over those weeks. He created new email addresses when we blocked his old ones, sent messages through mutual friends, even showed up at Jessica's apartment once. She called the police and got a restraining order. Danielle was considering the same. The craziest part? He tried to spin the whole thing like he was the victim. Sent Jessica this long email about how he'd been struggling with commitment issues and mental health problems, how he'd been trying to figure out what he wanted, how we'd all ambushed him instead of trying to work through it. As if there was anything to work through. As if you could accidentally maintain 4 simultaneous relationships. The audacity, Emily said when Jessica read us the email. The absolute audacity to try to make himself the victim in this situation. About 2 months after our coffee shop meeting, something interesting happened. A 5th woman contacted Danielle through the warning website. Her name was Priya, and she'd been seeing Marcus on and off for years. Not continuously, he'd disappear for months at a time, then come back claiming he'd been working overseas or dealing with family issues. She'd finally put the pieces together after seeing our post and realizing his patterns of disappearance lined up with his relationships with us. Years, Priya told us on a video call. I wasted years waiting for this man, thinking we had this deep connection, believing him when he said timing had never been right, but someday it would be. And the whole time he was running through relationships with other women, keeping me as a backup option. We were 5 now, 5 women comparing notes, supporting each other, marveling at the scale of deception one person could maintain. We started calling ourselves the Marcus Survivors, half joking, half serious. created a private online group where we could vent, share memes, celebrate our healing milestones. Danielle started a blog about her experience, not using Marcus's real name, but detailing what it was like to discover you'd been part of someone's web of lies. It resonated with people. Women started commenting, sharing their own stories of similar betrayals. It became this whole supportive community of people who'd been conned by romantic partners. Jessica went back to therapy to process everything. Emily got engaged to her boyfriend. We all went to the wedding, which was beautiful and honest, and everything a relationship should be. I started dating someone new, taking it slow, being honest about my past and my trust issues. He was patient and understanding, which made all the difference. Priya decided to write a book about romance fraud and narcissistic abuse, using her experience and ours as case studies. We all contributed, sharing our stories in detail. The book got picked up by a publisher and became a minor bestseller in the self-help category. We did a podcast interview together, all 5 of us, talking about our experiences and how we'd healed. And then Marcus tried to sue us for defamation. The lawsuit was baseless. Everything we'd said was true and documented. But it was stressful and expensive, and exactly the kind of manipulation tactic he'd always used, attacking when cornered, trying to make himself the victim, attempting to silence women who spoke truth about his actions. His lawyer sent cease and desist letters, demanded we take down the warning posts, stop discussing him publicly, remove his story from Priya's book. We consulted with our own lawyers, who assured us we were well within our rights to share our truthful experiences. He's trying to scare us into silence, Emily said during one of our group calls to discuss the lawsuit. That's all this is. He can't handle that he doesn't control the narrative anymore. We countersued for harassment. The discovery process for both lawsuits revealed even more about Marcus's pattern of behavior. Financial records showing he'd taken money from multiple women. Social media accounts we hadn't known about. Evidence of at least 3 more women he'd been involved with during the time frames we'd already documented. You know what I've learned from all this? Danielle said one evening. We were doing one of our regular video catch-ups, this time with wine and snacks like it was a virtual girls' night. That the aftermath of betrayal can actually be beautiful if you let it. I mean, I met you all because of the worst thing that happened to me, and you're some of my best friends now. She was right. We'd formed this bond, this sisterhood forged in shared trauma and collective healing. We celebrated each other's wins, supported each other through setbacks, and genuinely cared about each other's lives beyond our mutual connection to Marcus. Jessica got a promotion at work. Priya moved to a new city and started fresh. Danielle went back to school to become a therapist specializing in helping people recover from narcissistic relationships. Emily had her first baby. I bought my own house, a real adult milestone that felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. We still met up occasionally, the 5 of us, sometimes in person, usually virtual. The conversation had long since moved beyond Marcus. We talked about our jobs, our relationships, our families, our dreams. He'd become a footnote in our origin story, not the main character. About 3 years after I'd caught Marcus in that hotel, I got an unexpected message from his mother. I owe you an apology, it read. I knew something was wrong when you and Marcus broke up. He wouldn't give me details, just said you'd grown apart. I believed him because he's my son, and I wanted to believe him. But I've since learned the truth about what he did to you and to other women. I'm horrified and ashamed. I raised him better than this, or at least I thought I did. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for whatever pain my son caused you, and I hope you're doing well. I stared at that message for a long time. His mother and I had gotten along well. She'd been kind to me, included me in family events, talked about grandchildren someday. Learning the truth must have devastated her. I showed the message to my therapist. Yes, I was still in therapy, working on trust issues and relationship patterns. She helped me craft a response that was kind but boundaried. Thank you for reaching out, I wrote back. I appreciate the apology, though you have nothing to apologize for. Marcus's choices are his own. I've moved on and built a good life for myself. I hope you're taking care of yourself as well. She responded with gratitude and didn't push for more contact, which I respected. It was closure from an unexpected source, tying up one more loose end from that chapter of my life. The guy I'd been dating, Ryan, proposed to me on a beach at sunset. Completely cliché and absolutely perfect. He'd met the Marcus survivors at various points, knew my whole history, and never once made me feel broken or damaged because of it. Your past made you who you are, he said when I'd apologized early in our relationship for being overly suspicious about his whereabouts. And I happen to love who you are. Take all the time you need to trust me. I'll be here proving I'm trustworthy. And he had been. Consistent, honest, transparent. He'd given me his phone passcode without me asking, introduced me to his family immediately, never disappeared or made excuses, was exactly where he said he'd be when he said he'd be there. After Marcus, that simple reliability felt revolutionary. All the Marcus survivors came to my wedding. They were seated together, this random group of women of different ages and backgrounds united by shared experience. During the reception, Priya raised her glass in a toast. To surviving the worst to find the best, she said, and to friendship forged in fire. We clinked glasses, these women who'd started as strangers, brought together by one man's betrayal, and had somehow turned that trauma into something meaningful. Something good. I heard about Marcus occasionally through the grapevine. He'd moved to yet another city, was apparently in another relationship. We'd done what we could to warn people. The website posts, Priya's book, Danielle's blog, but we couldn't save everyone. Some people would have to learn the hard way, like we did. We'd made peace with that. The last I heard, he was engaged again. Part of me felt sorry for whoever she was, this woman who had no idea what she was signing up for. But she wasn't my responsibility. I'd told my truth, shared my story, and moved on with my life. 5 years after that trip, that contract, that night in the hotel lobby that changed everything, I barely thought about Marcus at all. He occasionally crossed my mind when something triggered a memory, but without any emotional charge. He was just a person I used to know who taught me important lessons about trust, boundaries, and my own worth. The Marcus Survivors group chat was still active, though the conversations now were mostly memes and life updates. Jessica had 2 kids. Emily was pregnant with her second. Danielle had finished her graduate program and was opening her own therapy practice. Priya's second book was coming out. And me? I was happy. Genuinely, uncomplicated happy. One random Tuesday, I got a message request on social media from Marcus. After all these years, all that had happened, he was trying to reach out again. The message preview showed, I know I don't deserve your time, but I've been in therapy and doing a lot of work on myself. I want to apologize properly for... I didn't read the rest. Just deleted the request and blocked him again. Because here's what I'd learned. Some people don't deserve your energy, even for closure they claim they need. His healing wasn't my responsibility. His guilt wasn't mine to absolve. I'd moved on, truly and completely, and I didn't need to revisit that pain to give him peace. I screenshot the message request and sent it to the group chat with a single word. Nope. The responses came in immediately. Laughing emojis, supportive messages, shared eye rolls. These women got it. They'd been through it. And we were all on the other side now, living our actual lives, the ones we'd built from the rubble of his lies. That evening, Ryan asked why I was smiling at my phone. I told him about Marcus's message and my immediate deletion of it. Good, he said simply. You deserve better than giving him any space in your head. And that was it. That was the whole point. I deserved better. We all did. And we'd found it, in ourselves, in each other, in the lives we'd built after betrayal. The Marcus chapter was closed. The next chapters were ours to write, and they were going to be so much better than anything we'd left behind. The next chapters were ours to write, and they were going to be so much better than anything we'd left behind. Except life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 2 years after Marcus's failed attempt to contact me, I was 7 months pregnant with my first child when Jessica called me at midnight, her voice frantic. Turn on the news, she said. Channel 7, right now. I fumbled for the remote, Ryan stirring beside me. What's going on? Are you okay? Just turn it on. The late-night news anchor's face filled the screen, and the headline beneath her made my blood run cold. Local man arrested in multi-state romance fraud scheme, allegedly swindled dozens of women out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there was Marcus's face, his mugshot specifically. Looking older, harder, caught. Holy shit. Ryan breathed beside me. The reporter detailed how Marcus had been arrested at an airport attempting to flee the country. Apparently, after his engagement fell apart, probably the woman he'd been with when he tried to message me, he'd pivoted his operation, stopped trying to maintain long-term relationships, and started running short-term cons. He'd create elaborate personas online, romance women quickly, spin stories about investment opportunities or family emergencies, extract money, and disappear. The FBI had been building a case for 18 months. They'd identified at least 47 victims across 12 states. The total amount stolen was estimated at over $800,000. My phone started blowing up. The Marcus Survivors group chat was exploding with messages. Emily, Danielle, Priya, Jessica, everyone was watching, everyone was processing. "Did he take money from any of you?" Priya asked in the chat. I thought back. He borrowed $3,000 from me once, for a medical emergency for his mom, who I later found out was perfectly healthy. "He got $5,000 from me," Jessica typed. "Said his car was totaled and he needed it for a down payment on a new one." $2,000 from Danielle. $7,500 from Emily. $4,000 from Priya. We'd all been financially victimized too, in smaller amounts. Amounts that had seemed reasonable at the time. Loans to a boyfriend in need. We'd never connected those dots before, never tallied it up. But now, seeing the scale of his operation, it made sickening sense. "The FBI is asking victims to come forward," the reporter said. "If you believe you've been targeted by this individual, please contact the number on your screen." "Are we going to?" Danielle asked in the group chat. "Hell yes, we are," I typed back. "Every single one of us. And we're giving them Priya's book, my documentation, everything. This man needs to face real consequences." The next morning, I called the FBI tip line, got transferred to Agent Sarah Morrison, who was leading the investigation. When I explained who I was and that I had 4 other women with documented histories of Marcus's deception, there was a long pause on the line. We ended up being key witnesses. All 5 of us gave detailed statements, handed over years of documentation, text messages, emails, financial records, timelines. The evidence we'd meticulously compiled while trying to make sense of our own experiences became the foundation for understanding his escalation from serial cheater to actual financial fraudster. Agent Morrison explained that what Marcus had done to us, the relationship fraud, the emotional manipulation, wasn't technically illegal in most cases, but it established his methods, his pattern, his MO. It showed premeditation and sophisticated planning. It would help them demonstrate to a jury that his later financial crimes weren't mistakes or misunderstandings, but the calculated actions of an experienced con artist. "Women like you rarely report," Agent Morrison told me during one of our interviews. "They feel ashamed or they don't think what happened to them counts as a crime. But your willingness to speak up, to document, to warn others, you probably prevented dozens of women from becoming his victims. The warning post on that website, 3 different women contacted us saying they'd found it while researching him and immediately ended contact. You saved them." That hit me harder than I expected. We'd posted that information out of frustration and a desire to warn others, never really knowing if it made a difference. Finding out it had actually protected people felt vindicating in a way I hadn't anticipated. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later. In the meantime, the story exploded. National news picked it up. "Romance scammer arrested" became a trending topic. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview us. The Marcus survivors, the women who'd turned their trauma into activism, who'd documented everything, who'd tried to warn people. We did a joint interview with a major news network, sat in a studio together, all 5 of us, telling our stories. The interviewer asked if we felt vindicated by his arrest. "It's not about vindication," Emily said thoughtfully. She was the most articulate of us, always had been. "It's about accountability. For years, Marcus operated without consequences. He hurt people and moved on, knowing no one would stop him. Now someone finally is." "Do you think he can change?" the interviewer asked. "I think people can change if they want to," I answered. "But Marcus has shown zero genuine remorse. Every apology he's given has been about managing his image or manipulating his way out of consequences. Real change requires taking responsibility, and he's never done that." The interview went viral. Our segment got millions of views. The comments section was split between people supporting us and people calling us bitter exes who couldn't let go. The latter hurt, but the Marcus survivors had been through worse together. We knew our truth. More women came forward after seeing the interview. Women Marcus had scammed financially, women he'd emotionally manipulated, women who'd been too ashamed to speak up before. The victim count grew to over 70. Agent Morrison told us they were still discovering the full extent of his operation. "He's been doing this for at least 15 years, she said during one update, possibly longer. You five were probably among his earlier victims, back when he was still trying to maintain actual relationships. But even then, he was laying groundwork for the financial exploitation. Small loans he never repaid, testing boundaries, seeing what he could get away with. My daughter was born 3 weeks before the trial started, Elena Grace. When I held her in the hospital, Ryan beside me, I made a silent promise that I would teach her to trust her instincts, to value herself, to never let anyone make her doubt her own reality. The lessons I'd learned from Marcus, reframed as gifts for my daughter. The Marcus survivors all sent flowers and gifts. To the newest member of our extended family, read the card from Priya. May she grow up in a world where men like Marcus face consequences. I couldn't attend the trial in person because of Elena, but I testified via video link. Sat in a federal building with Elena sleeping in her carrier beside me and told my story to a jury. The defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, suggested my relationship with Marcus had been consensual and my alleged losses were just the normal financial dynamics of a couple. He stole from me, I said clearly, looking directly at the camera. He lied to me about who he was, maintained simultaneous relationships with multiple women, borrowed money under false pretenses, and never paid it back. That's not a relationship. That's fraud. Emily testified in person. So did Jessica and Danielle. Priya's testimony was particularly powerful because she had the longest documented history with him. Years of his patterns, his cycles, his lies. The prosecution also brought in newer victims, women he'd scammed out of tens of thousands of dollars with stories about investments or business opportunities or family emergencies. One woman, Sarah, had lost $45,000. She'd met Marcus on a dating app 2 years prior. He'd courted her intensely, said he was falling in love with her, then told her about an amazing investment opportunity his financial advisor friend had shared with him. She'd given him the money, her entire savings, and he'd disappeared. Blocked her on everything. She'd filed a police report, but it had gone nowhere until the FBI investigation connected the dots. Another woman, Michaela, had lost her house. Marcus had convinced her to take out a second mortgage to fund what he claimed was a real estate development project. Promised her triple returns within 6 months. She lost everything when the project, which never existed, fell through. She'd been living in her sister's basement for a year. Hearing these stories was devastating. Marcus had evolved from the man who juggled relationships to someone who deliberately destroyed lives for profit. The emotional manipulation we'd experienced had been bad enough, but this was a whole different level of cruelty. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, text messages, emails, testimony from over 30 women. Marcus's defense was weak, basically arguing that these were all just failed business deals and misunderstandings in relationships. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering. The courtroom erupted. Several victims started crying. I watched via video link, holding Elena, tears streaming down my face. Sentencing came 2 months later. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd clearly done her homework. She spoke for 20 minutes before announcing the sentence, talking about the psychological damage Marcus had inflicted, the lives he'd destroyed, the systematic nature of his crimes. "Mr. Thompson," she said, that was his last name, Marcus Thompson, though he'd used several aliases over the years, "you are a predator. You targeted vulnerable women, exploited their trust, and destroyed their financial security without remorse. You've shown no genuine contrition, only anger at being caught. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also be ordered to pay restitution to your victims in the amount of $847,000. 15 years. He'd be in his mid-50s when he got out. It wouldn't undo the damage, wouldn't give back the years or the money or the trust he'd stolen. But it was something. It was accountability. The Marcus survivors celebrated quietly that night. A video call with wine, even though I was breastfeeding and could only have half a glass. We toasted to justice, to survival, to the end of this chapter. I never thought we'd get here, Jessica said, wiping her eyes. When I first found out about all of you, when we met in that coffee shop, I thought we'd just commiserate and move on. I never imagined we'd end up being part of taking him down. We didn't just take him down, Danielle corrected. We built something. This friendship, this support system. We turned his attempt to destroy us into something that made us stronger. She was right. The Marcus survivors had become more than just a support group. We'd become genuine friends, invested in each other's lives beyond our shared trauma. We celebrated birthdays and promotions and babies. We supported each other through breakups and job losses and family drama. Marcus had been the catalyst, but we were the ones who'd chosen to build something meaningful from the wreckage. The restitution money came slowly. Marcus obviously didn't have $847,000. His assets were seized. A car, some electronics, about $23,000 in a bank account. It would be distributed among the victims proportionally. I'd probably get back a few $100s out of the $3,000 he'd taken from me. It was laughable, but it wasn't really about the money anymore. A victims advocacy group reached out to us about doing a documentary. They wanted to tell the full story, from the overlapping relationships to the financial fraud to the trial. We debated it in the group chat. Part of me was tired of being defined by this, wanted to just move on with my life. But another part knew that telling the story might help other people recognize the warning signs earlier. We agreed to do it. Spent several days each being interviewed, revisiting old text messages and emails, walking through our experiences chronologically. It was exhausting and cathartic in equal measure. The documentary was called The Con Man's Wives and premiered on a major streaming platform about a year after the trial. It was incredibly well done, balancing our personal stories with expert commentary from psychologists and law enforcement about how romance scammers operate. The response was overwhelming. We got thousands of messages from people thanking us for sharing our stories, people who'd recognized similar patterns in their own relationships, people who'd been scammed by other con artists and felt less alone after seeing the documentary. But we also got hate. People who accused us of being gold diggers, of making up stories for attention, of being stupid for falling for such obvious lies. The victim blaming was intense and nasty. Some of it came from incel forums and men's rights groups who used our story as proof that women lie about being victimized. Don't read the comments became our group chat mantra. But it was hard not to. Hard not to internalize the criticism, not to second-guess our decision to go public. My therapist helped me work through it. You told your truth, she said. You can't control how people receive it, but for every person leaving a nasty comment, there are dozens who watched that documentary and learned something valuable. You probably prevented future victims just by speaking up. A few months after the documentary aired, I got a message from a woman named Allison. She'd seen the documentary and recognized some of Marcus's patterns in a man she'd been dating. She'd done some digging, found out he was married with 2 kids, and had ended things before getting financially entangled. You saved me from wasting years on a liar, her message said. I can't thank you enough for being brave enough to share your story. I screenshot that message and sent it to the group chat. This is why we did it. Messages like Allison's came regularly. Not every day, but often enough to matter. People who'd recognized red flags because of our story. People who'd trusted their instincts instead of dismissing them. People who'd gotten out of bad relationships earlier than they otherwise might have. We couldn't save everyone. There were still people who dismissed the warning signs, who thought their situation was different, who learned the hard way. But we'd made a difference for some, and that had to be enough. Elena grew into a curious, confident toddler. Ryan and I bought a bigger house. I got promoted again at work. Life moved forward in the way it does, busy and chaotic and full of normal problems that had nothing to do with Marcus Thompson. But every so often, something would remind me. A news story about another romance scammer. A message from someone who'd seen the documentary. The annual update from the Bureau of Prisons showing Marcus was still incarcerated. We'd all registered for notifications of any change in his status. The Marcus survivors still talked regularly, though less frequently than before. Jessica's kids were in elementary school now. Emily had 3 kids and was perpetually exhausted but happy. Danielle's therapy practice was thriving. Priya had written 2 more books and become a sought-after speaker on narcissistic abuse and financial fraud. And me? I had a second baby on the way, a daughter we planned to name Sophia. "Remember when we thought Marcus was the worst thing that ever happened to us?" Emily said during one of our video catch-ups. "I was so devastated when I found out about all of you. Thought my life was over." "And now?" Priya prompted. "Now I can't imagine my life without you weirdos in it." Emily laughed. "I mean, I wish we'd met under different circumstances, but I'm grateful we met at all." We all echoed that sentiment. It was the strangest silver lining, finding deep, genuine friendship through shared trauma with women we never would have otherwise known. About 4 years into Marcus's sentence, I got a notification that he was being transferred to a minimum security facility for good behavior. The notification system required victims to register if they wanted to submit a statement about the transfer. I debated whether it was worth my time. In the end, I wrote a short statement. Not for him, I doubted he'd ever read it or care if he did, but for the record, for anyone who might review his case in the future. Marcus Thompson systematically destroyed the trust and financial security of dozens of women, I wrote. His good behavior in prison doesn't erase the calculated cruelty of his crimes. He has never shown genuine remorse, never taken true accountability. Whatever privileges he's earned through compliance in prison should be weighed against the lifetime of damage he inflicted on his victims. Some of us are still recovering financially. All of us carry emotional scars. Good behavior should mean more than just following rules. It should mean demonstrating genuine change and remorse. "Who's Marcus?" she asked me one day, out of nowhere. She'd somehow gotten into my laptop and seen an old news article. My heart stopped. She was only 5. Way too young to understand the full story. But I'd promised myself I'd always be honest with my kids, age appropriately. "Marcus was someone I knew a long time ago who made some bad choices and hurt people," I said carefully. "He taught me some important lessons about trusting my instincts and being careful who I trust." "Did he hurt you?" "Yes," I said simply. "But I'm okay now." And I learned a lot from that experience that made me stronger and smarter. She processed this with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can muster, then asked, "Is that why you and Daddy talk about green flags and red flags?" Ryan and I had been deliberately teaching both girls about healthy relationship dynamics, age appropriately. Green flags were people who were kind and honest and respected boundaries. Red flags were people who lied or pressured you or made you feel bad about yourself. "Yes," I told her. "That's exactly why." She nodded and went back to her coloring, the conversation apparently over. But I sat there for a long time, thinking about how something so devastating had somehow led to me being a better parent, more intentional about teaching my daughters to value themselves. The Marcus Survivors started an official nonprofit around year 5. We'd been doing informal victim advocacy for years, responding to messages, offering support, connecting people with resources. Why not make it official? We called it Trust Your Instincts, Romance Fraud, Prevention, and Victim Support. Danielle ran it since she was the therapist and had the most relevant professional expertise. The rest of us served on the board and contributed when we could. We created resources for recognizing romance scams, guides for reporting fraud, support groups for victims, partnered with law enforcement to do educational presentations, lobbied for better laws around romance fraud, raised money to help victims recoup financial losses when restitution wasn't possible. It was meaningful work, even if it was just a few hours a month each. We were taking our experience and using it to help others. Marcus had tried to break us, and instead we'd built something that helped prevent others from being broken the same way. Marcus became eligible for parole after serving 10 years. All of us submitted statements opposing his release. So did dozens of other victims. The parole board denied his petition. He'd have to serve at least another 2 years before he could apply again. "He's going to get out eventually," Jessica said during our discussion about the parole hearing. "We need to be ready for that." "Ready how?" Danielle asked. "Ready to not let it derail us," Jessica clarified. "Ready to not give him power over our lives again just because he's out of prison. Ready to keep living well, which is the best revenge anyway." She was right. The real victory wasn't keeping Marcus in prison forever, though we'd certainly fight every parole attempt. The real victory was building lives so full and meaningful that his eventual release barely registered as a blip in our happiness. My daughters, Elena now 10, Sophia 6, asked more questions as they got older. About the documentary they'd found online, about why their mom and aunties, the Marcus survivors, had this tight bond, about what had happened all those years ago. I told them more of the truth as they matured. Not the graphic details, but the outline. How I'd been in a relationship with someone who'd lied to me. How I discovered he was lying to other women too. How we'd all become friends and eventually helped bring him to justice. How sometimes bad things lead to good things in unexpected ways. Were you scared? Sophia asked. Sometimes, I admitted, but mostly I was just done being lied to, and I had amazing friends who supported me. The aunties, Elena said with confidence. She'd grown up with Emily and Jessica and Danielle and Priya at every major event of her life. They were as much family as any blood relative. The aunties, I agreed. Ryan and I celebrated 15 years of marriage. The proposal on the beach felt like another lifetime, though the relationship felt as strong as ever. He'd been patient through all the Marcus trauma, supportive through the trial and documentary and nonprofit work. Never made me feel damaged or difficult because of my trust issues. You know what I appreciate most about us? I told him at our anniversary dinner. The boring reliability. You're exactly who you say you are, exactly where you say you'll be. After Marcus, that's the most romantic thing I can imagine. He laughed and squeezed my hand. I promise to keep being boringly reliable. Please do. If you want the continuation, follow.